All right, one last question on this, if I may. Do you think the plan, I remember once I was interviewing you and asking you about this very issue, and you said to me, well, first of all, I signed the plan, but it wasn't exactly the plan I wanted. Apparently, you had vetoed aspects of this. Mm-hmm. Did that have a big impact? And if you had to go back today and look at it, would you have done it exactly the same way? Would you have done it differently? Do you think it was a success? In other words, the bill that you passed in Massachusetts.
Well, there are a number of things in the bill that I would have changed at the time, and I continue to think those changes would have been better. And there are things I'd change in it now. You learn from experience. And so, yeah, a lot of things I'd change. It's not perfect. There are a lot of things in that bill that don't work. But the nice thing about a state solution to a state problem is that it's relatively easy to make changes and improve it. And I can tell you, if I were governor of Massachusetts, the problems people point out, I'd fix. That's it. But I'm not running for governor. I'm running for president of the United States. And that's why it's so important for me to make clear, I will repeal Obamacare. I will grant a waiver to all 50 states immediately upon taking office. And I will go to work to make sure that the American people understand that it is at the state level that we care for those that don't have insurance.
And coming up, the final installment of my interview with GOP presidential contender Mitt Romney. He shares his views on all the fiscal reforms proposed by Paul Ryan and whether or not he'd implement them as president. Plus, the fallout from Wienergate continues. Will the congressman survive this scandal? We have a great American panel and a special edition of Media Mash still to come about Governor Palin's bus trip around the country. And welcome back to Hannity. Former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney officially announced his candidacy for president earlier today, and I sat down with him in New Hampshire for this interview, and here is our final installment. You said that the president, you just mentioned it, I want to get back to this, threw Israel under the bus when he said that Israel should go back to 67 borders. And then he sort of backed off from it. Explain what you meant when you were saying that.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that when Bibi Netanyahu got here, that something very dramatic had happened. And that is that the president, by insisting on the 67 borders, laid out what a bargaining position might be that perhaps the Israelis ought to take the lead on, not America. You don't tell your ally how you would settle a dispute between them and another people. You stand by your ally. You link arms with your ally. Israel is one of our best allies in the Middle East, the best ally in the Middle East. We don't dictate to Israel what the terms of their agreement might be. And it's also been very clear in the past that presidents have said, look, we can't possibly have negotiations unless the result of all this will be that the Palestinians and other nations around them agree that when a peace agreement is reached, that there's peace, that Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish state. And that's something which Hamas and of course, the Palestinian Authority continued to refuse to agree to.
Well, what amazes me is with the Palestinians in a unity agreement now with Hamas. Hamas's charter calls not only for the destruction of Israel, but also for the destruction of Jews. They're really calling for a modern-day Holocaust. And for the president to even suggest, he did mention that it's got to be addressed, but to suggest that they should even negotiate in any way until that one issue is resolved. Would the United States of America ever sit down with a group of people whose charter called for our destruction and the destruction of our people?
We don't negotiate with terrorists. And the president was suggesting that Israel should negotiate with terrorists. And that's why people like myself believe that he threw Israel under the bus. The right course in dealing with allies is to lock arms with them, make sure there's not a dime's worth of distance between them in public. Now, if you got an issue with Bibi Netanyahu, then sit down in private and hammer it out. But then come out, hold arms together and say, we're together. Because ultimately, if you don't do that, then the foes of America or of our allies around the world, they take courage from what they think is a split between us. And they try and get a better deal. They try and play one off against the other. And that's what's happening here. You're not seeing progress in Middle East peace talks, in part because the president has not made it clear to Israel that we stand firmly and squarely behind him.
You have really gone after the president on the issue of apologizing for America. To what extent do you think that hurts our position in the world?
Well, I think the president's posture from the very beginning was one of saying, look, all the people in the world have the common interests that we all share. And if we could just sit down together and understand each other better and meet with the president and so forth, he suggested he was going to meet with all the world's worst leaders, as you recall,
Iran, yeah.
Including Ahmadinejad. I disagree with that premise. I don't think everybody in the world has the same interests. I think there are some people in the world who seek to oppress and pillage other people. And I think America has to show that we reject those people and that we are strong in defending our principles and liberty.
I want to go back to the economy for 1 second, because how many years, as you look at these deficits and you look at the debt ceiling battle that's going on in Washington, and for example, Paul Ryan is talking about cutting $6.2 trillion over a period of time, reforming Medicare, Social Security. If you become president, realistically, how are you going to balance the budget, how long it's going to take, and how do you deal with entitlements, which seems, you know, we're always told it's the third rail in American politics. Don't touch them. How would you deal with those?
Well, there are three parts of government spending. One is the discretionary accounts, and those have to be pulled back dramatically. Number two is the military. A lot of waste in the military. But I'm not going to take that waste and use it to fund more social programs. I'm going to take that waste and rebuild a modern Navy and a modern Air Force and have more boots that we're able to put on the ground. So we're not going to cut our military spending. Then comes, if you will, all the entitlements. Medicaid, give it back to the states. Dramatically reduce its cost.
Give it back. Give
it back to the states. A lot of what is being done in Washington can be done for less cost and with less fraud by giving it back to the states.
Do you like the Ryan plan?
I do.
And you do?
I do like the Ryan plan.
And how do you overcome the demagoguery?
It's not my plan. It's not my plan.
Yeah,
my plan is
like
different than the Ryan plan, but his is a great start.
Yeah.
His objectives make sense. He wants more choice for the American people. That's good. So I like those features.
What do you do when they say you're going to be throwing Granny over the cliff?
You know, we're going to live with demagoguery. I think the American people recognize that the time for truth is here, and the time for kicking the can down the road is gone. And I think if the president sticks to his demagoguery on this issue, that ultimately the American people are going to say, we've had enough of that. We got to be honest. People recognize we can't keep going like we're going, that the debt that we're putting in place is crippling for the future, and that the only way to save Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security is by reforming them and making them sustainable. Otherwise, we could go off that cliff, and these programs could be in real jeopardy.
Last question. As you look at all of your rivals now that you're officially in this race, how tough is it going to be, and how do you distinguish yourself in this race from all of your fellow GOP hopefuls?
I think we're far more effective and wise as people running for the Republican nomination, not to spend our time shooting at one another, but to make sure that our sights are very much focused on the presidency and getting America right again and creating jobs and keeping America strong. And we'll each describe our own vision for that and our own experience. And I believe I'm the guy that's in this race with 25 years of private sector experience, also having run an Olympics and run a state. I've demonstrated what I can do, the good and the bad. And I believe that record and my vision is what will distinguish me from the rest of the field and hopefully give me a chance to get America strong again.
Governor, great to see you. Thanks, you for being
Sean.
with us. Congratulations on your big announcement today.
Thank you.
And coming up, here's a shocker. Sarah Palin's bus tour is not sitting well with the mainstream media. We're going to break down the liberal bias coverage and why it may backfire. Media mash on our Great American panel, and the latest on Wienergate coming up. As we continue on Hannity, it's time for Media Mash, our weekly roundup of all the ways the mainstream media tries to put their liberal spin on the news. This week, we have some great material, and here to sort it all out is the president of the Media Research Center, Brent Bozell. Mr. Bozell, sir, welcome back.
How are we doing?
All right, reporters suggesting that Governor Palin's disregard for them and the lamestream media, they're actually, it's going to hurt her with the voters because she doesn't trust or like them. Pretty interesting. Watch this.
At the same time, Palin seems to delight in having a bad relationship with what she calls the lamestream media, and she's angering some Republicans as well about this tour by not notifying them ahead of time.
It's this extended flirtation, you might almost call it, with running. The only media, too, that she wants to speak to is her employer, Fox News. Does any of this risk, though, rubbing voters the wrong way?
It's not, it rubs them the wrong way. That she says, I don't trust you guys. You've never been fair to me. And guess what? I have better things to do with my time. What do you think?
Sean, this is fascinating. I am loving this. Remember the old commercials about the uncola? She is the uncandidate. And what she is doing is absolutely unconventional in modern political history. She's running against the press, mocking them. And you know why? She says, if they think that she's making herself uncomfortable, how's this? in the Suffolk University poll, yet another poll that shows what's the #1 network on television today, most trusted, Fox News. Do you know what the trust level for ABC is? 10%. NBC, 6%. CBS, 6%.
Yeah.
She's having a field day running against them.
Yeah, I got a
She
kick
knows
out of-
exactly what she's doing.
We got on the Reverend Wright story in 2007, and Diane Sawyer was on the network yesterday bragging, no, we broke that story. I'm like, a year later, where were you? And I was being excoriated for staying on Wright and Ayers and Flager and a radical candidate. But anyway, let's go back. CNN reporter, you know, this is a low point for the media, this Palin bus tour. They started complaining they were like paparazzi. That's their problem. Anyway, here's what was said on CNN.
Sarah Palin wants us all to know, folks, this is not a campaign bus, and this is actually some sort of, I don't know, family vacation. Jessica Yellen, what do you make of this?
What I make of the coverage of this Palin bus tour, not the tour, but the coverage of it, is a media low point. Chasing around someone who so far is not running for president and who has been playing the kind of tease the media games that only movie stars and reality stars play is kind of a media low point.
I guess it's hard for them to understand that there are people that really care about the Constitution and, you know, understand that America's at a tipping point and are really concerned. That couldn't even cross their mind that people care about things like this.
But Sean Hannity, do you know how silly that reporter is? This reporter for CNN who called it a media low point. Do you know that Monday night CNN covered Sarah Palin every single hour? Do you know that Tuesday, all day long, every hour, CNN covered her? Do you know that John Harwood or John King spent 2 hours at that site that she was at Gettysburg covering her? His central location was her tour, and now their own reporter is calling it a media low point. She's going to be really popular around that water cooler tomorrow.
Then they take it a step further. NBC, ABC, she has zero chance of winning. But of course, she should be on their networks, but zero chance of winning, according to the so-called experts, which just makes this even more comical.
The White House and top Democrats I talk to look at the field. They say, okay, Romney has a good shot. It'll be a close race with the president. Paul Lenti could run a close race with the president. John Huntsman could run a close race with the president. They look at Newt Gingrich, Sarah Palin, and Michelle Bachmann as basically re-election insurance.
The first thing to know about Sarah Palin is she has, given her negatives nationally in this country, she has next to zero chance of being elected president, probably can't even be elected to or win the Republican nomination.
Yeah, but please, Governor Palin, come on our shows. Come on, because you're good for ratings. People want to hear from you, but you can't be president, but come on anyway. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, two points here, Sean. These are the same quote-unquote experts who told you that Nixon couldn't win. They're the same experts who said that Reagan couldn't win in 1980.
Or Clinton.
These are the same experts that 4 years ago told us that Obama couldn't win against Hillary Clinton. And now they're passing judgment on her. And if they're so right about this, you're right, Sean. Why do they have her on the air every 2 minutes? Yeah. What does that say about them?
All right, let me give you another example. So Herman Cain is on CBS, and, you know, they invite Cain on to complain about too much Palin coverage. If it couldn't get any more bizarre, here it is.